About truth, we can't conversate. A chosen generation, you not common, Jake.
Test 1 2. All right, we're gonna go ahead and get started with Q&A. We're gonna ask the brothers to uncover your heads and sisters cover your heads. We're gonna stand and face Jerusalem and open up for question and answer. Our Father which art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done in earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our debts as we forgive our debtors. Lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, and the power, and the glory forever. In Jesus' mighty name we pray. Amen. Are these mics loud enough? Can y'all hear?
Tested.
Test 1 2. Test 1 2.
Test 1 2.
Testing. He's good? Okay. Which one is mine? Test. Turn up. Testing 1, 2, testing 1, 2. More. You turn up the right one. Test 1, 2. Turn that one up. Turn it all the way up. Test 1. It's all the way. Talking to that one.
Testing.
Yeah, you too.
Test 1, 2.
You want to check. You
Testing,
wanna check it where you
testing.
go, no, yeah. Mine, did it go up at all? No, don't do that. Which fader is it?
So try 11.
Is this the mic? Is that 9? Okay, turn the trim up on 9. That's all the way at the top. Test. That's not doing anything. Test. Test.
Yikes. It's just the feedback. The feedback is bad.
It's okay. Here, you come do it.
Test.
Who is it?
Test. Testing 1, 2. Test. Test.
Testing.
Test. Test.
Thank you. Testing 1, 2. All right, that's a little better, right? All right, we're gonna go ahead and open up the floor for Q&A. What? Yeah. Yeah, now I can see it. Sorry if there's like abrupt noises online. One more thing in the back. Can you check and make sure that the VU meter, not on the board, on the screen, going into the stream is not too loud? Test 1, 2. Test 1, 2.
Testing.
Test 1, 2. Test 1, 2. Test 1, 2. Just the volume meter right there. Test 1, 2. It's not yellow or red, right? Test 1, 2.
Test.
All right, cool. All right, we're gonna go ahead and open up the floor. Who has the first question? Anybody have a question? Anybody have a question? Okay, well, let's go look at this. Let's deal with a question that I kind of been getting. Let's go to Exodus chapter 20. This is regarding the Sabbath. What can we do on the Sabbath? Can we work on the Sabbath? Can we go to graduations on the Sabbath? Can we go to anniversary parties? Can we go to a funeral? Things like that. Can we do these things on the Sabbath? Let's go to Exodus chapter 20 and start at verse 8. Exodus 20 and 8. Go ahead.
Remember the Sabbath day to keep it holy.
Okay, so that's the first commandment, right? I mean, that's the first part of the commandment. The first part of the commandment is that we are supposed to keep this day holy. Right? Keep going.
6 days shalt thou labor and do all thy work.
Okay, that's the next thing to remember and understand. God has given us 6 days to manage how we will manage those 6 days. Right? So he started this commandment by saying, remember this day to keep it holy. Then he reminded us that we have 6 days to do our labor and all our work. Right? Keep going.
But the 7th day is the Sabbath of the Lord thy God. In it thou shalt not do any work, thou, nor thy son, nor thy daughter, nor thy manservant, nor thy maidservant, nor thy cattle, nor thy stranger that is within thy gates.
Okay, so anybody that you have control over, you know, if you have a business, or the people in your household, your children, your son, your daughter, your manservant, your maidservant, or your animals, right? Anything that's working for you, or the stranger that's within your gates. Somebody that's in your control and your care, or somebody that you have hired, they are not to do any work, right? That's the commandment. So now, again, like we saw in the lesson today, we are in captivity in a land where people don't know these things, or they know and don't care. But be that as it's may, the world is going on business as usual, right? So let's have all the children have a seat, please. Or you guys can, you know, have a seat. Yeah. So the world is going on business as usual. And we can see examples, and we're going to see examples of that as well. The world going on business as usual on the Sabbath. But there's not any work to be done. Verse 11, go ahead.
For in 6 days the Lord made heaven and earth.
So the Lord did all his work in creating, in creation in those 6 days. Keep going.
In it, sorry, my bad. For in 6 days the Lord made heaven and earth, the sea, and all that is in them is, and rested the seventh day. Wherefore the Lord blessed the Sabbath day and hallowed it.
So the Lord created the earth in 6 days, and what did he himself do? He rested on the Sabbath, right? Okay. So now, you want them to come up and have a seat too? Yeah.
Come up and
Let's have everybody come up to the front and have a seat.
Ashrak and Malachi, y'all come sit over here, please.
Yeah, everybody. Yeah, come up and have a seat.
You know what I'm saying? I just wanted to chill out and just got here, relax and hear some word.
Yeah, everybody always want to start eating when the word come happen. That was for lunch. Now we're gonna deal with some word. Nehemiah 13. Let's go to Nehemiah 13. Because again, the question is asked, what can we do on the Sabbath? Well, we already see that we're not supposed to work. So now, what happens when the rest of the world is working? Right? Can we partake in things from their work on the Sabbath? Right? Because some might say, oh, well, I'm not working, but hey, they working. So whatever they're doing don't affect me. Okay, yeah, it doesn't affect you if you're not partaking in it. But if you are doing something to cause them to work, and let's just be clear, anybody having a graduation, funeral, anniversary, family reunion on the Sabbath, they're working, right? Somebody having a funeral on the Sabbath, they're working, right? Right?
Yep.
Somebody having a graduation on the Sabbath, they're working. And generally, gladly working. Generally, they don't care that it's the Sabbath. Remember, he said, remember the Sabbath to keep it holy. Okay, let's go to Nehemiah 13 and start at verse 13. 13 and 13, go ahead.
And I made treasurers over the treasuries.
I'm sorry. 15. 15, go ahead.
In those days saw I in Judah some treading wine presses on the Sabbath, and bringing in sheaves and lading asses, as also wine, grapes, and figs, and all manner of burdens, which they brought into Jerusalem on the Sabbath day.
So they treading wine presses, right? They're making wine, bringing in sheaves and lading asses, and also wine, grapes, and figs, and all manner of burdens. I forgot to throw in there a wedding, right? You might see this very scene at the backstage of a wedding, right? Outside in the back as they loading up, right? Getting the wine ready, getting the food ready, bringing stuff in, bringing stuff out. That's the kind of activity that's happening during a wedding, right? Because that we could throw that in the hat. Can we go to a wedding on the Sabbath? Well, again, for any of these productions to happen on the Sabbath, someone must work. And why do we know that? Because when the Lord commands us to have a feast on the Sabbath, he gives us the leeway to do what? To do some work preparing for the feast. Right? Hold your finger here. Let's go look at that. We're going to come back to Nehemiah. Exodus, I think it's 12. Yeah, Exodus 12. Go to Exodus 12 real quick. Exodus 12, verse 16. 15. Exodus 12 and 15. Go ahead.
7 days shall ye eat unleavened bread. Even the first day ye shall put away leaven out of your houses. For whosoever eateth leavened bread from the first day until the 7th day, that soul shall be cut off from Israel. And in the first day there shall be an holy convocation. And in the 7th day there shall be an holy convocation to you. No manner of work shall be done in them, save that which every man must eat, that only may be done of you.
So he's acknowledging that the work that's done to prepare for the feast is considered work, right? As we know that. But why are we showing this? Because any other feast that a non-believer puts together, like a wedding, or a graduation, or an anniversary, or a funeral, because they got food there too, right? We just recently went to a funeral. They had the service, and then they had the food after. That's all work. So inherently, anyone doing that on the Sabbath is breaking the Sabbath to begin with. That's first of all. They're breaking the Sabbath to begin with. So now we're back to Nehemiah 13. Read verse 15 again. Go ahead.
In those days saw I in Judah some treading wine presses on the Sabbath, and bringing in sheaves and lading asses, as also wine, grapes, and figs, and all manner of burdens, which they brought into Jerusalem on the Sabbath day. And I testified against them in the day wherein they sold victuals. There dwelt men of Tyre also therein, which brought fish and all manner of ware, and sold on the Sabbath unto the children of Judah and in Jerusalem.
So you got the people of the world, the people of the land, the men of Tyre, they bringing in stuff to sell to the children of Israel on the Sabbath. Right? And the children of Israel are buying on the Sabbath. So why is it wrong for them to buy? Because for you to buy, someone's got to be selling, meaning somebody is working. Right? So in order to not partake in them working, you can't buy anything from them because you're encouraging there to be work to be done. Verse 17, go ahead.
Then I contended with the nobles of Judah, and said unto them, what evil thing is this that ye do, and profane the Sabbath day? Did not your fathers thus, and did not our God bring all this evil upon us, and upon the city? Yet ye bring more wrath upon Israel by profaning the Sabbath. And it came to pass that when the gates of Jerusalem began to be dark before the Sabbath, I commanded that the gates should be shut, and charged that they should not be opened till after the Sabbath.
So notice what he's saying. To stop this all, what is he doing? He's having the gates be shut before the Sabbath, right? Sure. And it came to pass that when the gates of Jerusalem began to be dark before the Sabbath, I commanded that the gates should be shut and charged that they should not be open till after the Sabbath. Why? Because they were coming in and selling things on the Sabbath day, right? Sure. So if we were in the land, would we still be able to go to the store and grab something right before it's dark? You know how we be doing that, right? Like, oh, I still got some time. Let me go grab this. You're only able to do that because people are breaking the Sabbath. They don't have no plan to keep it. If they plan to keep it, all that would be done well before the Sabbath started. So that's really when we should be done too, right? really we should be working to be finished well before it gets dark. Because see right here it said they were going to shut the gates before it got dark. You wouldn't have been able to buy nothing. You'd have to buy it the day before or that morning, right? So that's what we should be doing. Keep going.
And some of my servants set I at the gates.
So now, if the gates of Jerusalem are shut and nobody's buying or selling, nobody's working inside, who's holding a wedding? You can't, they got guards at the gate, they shut. You can't even get out, can't get in. Who holding the wedding? How you going to a wedding? Who holding the graduation? Who doing that? Keep going.
That there should no burden be brought in on the Sabbath day. So the merchants and sellers of all kind of ware lodged without Jerusalem once or twice.
Notice notice the non-believers, right? Notice the Sabbath breakers. They outside still loitering.
Yeah, loitering.
We're at Nehemiah 13 and 20. So you got the Sabbath breakers still out there loitering, trying to see if they can get back in and get back to business as usual and forget the Sabbath, right? So the merchants and sellers of all kind of ware lodged without Jerusalem once or twice. Verse 21.
Then I testified against them and said unto them, Why lodge ye about the wall? If ye do so again, I will lay hands on you. From that time forth came they no more on the Sabbath.
That sounds pretty strict, right? He said he gonna hit them with the Floyd Mayweather. They keep doing that. Stay around here if you want. We're going to put hands on you. Y'all better get out of here. Why? Because we are going to do what God said. If you don't want to do what God said, get away from our city. Get away from these walls until the Sabbath day is over. But you're going to respect this Sabbath. Right? Did we finish with that?
21 we're done yet.
Yeah, go ahead.
22. And I
21, that's good. That's good. So that's showing us the lengths they went through, or that Nehemiah went through, because we're going to see in Jeremiah that we still dropped the ball with the Sabbath. And that's one of the main reasons why we got the huge identity problem that we have is behind us not keeping this Sabbath holy, right? But we see the lengths he went through to try to keep the non-believers, to try to keep the Sabbath breakers from polluting our Sabbath and being involved to where we are now involved with them polluting the Sabbath, right? There's got to be a delineation. So he's like, shut the doors, put guards there. We're going to make a distinction between who's keeping the Sabbath and who's not. So now let's go to Jeremiah. Jeremiah, give me 1 second. Hold on. Oh, goodness. Yeah, 17, sorry. Jeremiah 17. Jeremiah 17. Jeremiah 17, In verse 24, 17:24. Go ahead.
And it shall come to pass, if ye diligently hearken unto me, saith the Lord, to bring in no burden through the gates of this city on the Sabbath day, but hallow the Sabbath day, to do no work therein.
Notice what he's saying. This deal that the Lord is proposing to the children of Israel still is about doing work on the Sabbath. The children of Israel did not want to stop their work on the Sabbath. And again, when we're talking about any of these events where people ask the question, can I go do this on the Sabbath? Can I go do that on the Sabbath? For us to do it, there must be a host of non-believers putting this production on and breaking these very things, right? For that to even happen. You don't have a bunch of believers putting on a production on the Sabbath, right? You gotta be in an environment where there's a host of non-believers that are putting on these productions for us to say, okay, well, I'm just going to go ahead and deal with it. So he said, it shall come to pass, if ye diligently hearken unto me, saith the Lord, to bring no burden through the gates of the city on the Sabbath day, but hallow the Sabbath day, to do no work there, in verse 25.
Then shall there enter into the gates of the city kings and princes sitting upon the throne of David, riding in chariots and on horses, they and their princes. The men of Judah and the inhabitants of Jerusalem and the city shall remain forever.
Now, why is that? Why is the Sabbath something that's so important that if we keep that, then we would have still kept Jerusalem? Right? That's the question. Because notice, the Sabbath is going to be a great delineator between the cares of this world and those who serve God. Because hey, the world is going to be doing stuff on the Sabbath, and that's where we're going to draw the line. We're going to say, no, we can't do that on the Sabbath. That's where the line is going to be drawn, or that's where the compromise is going to be made by somebody, right? Somebody's going to either say, no, I'm going to serve God, or they're going to say, well, we ain't got to serve God right now. Let's just take this day, and we'll do what y'all want to do. Right? But he's saying, if you keep the Sabbath, we would have still had Jerusalem, meaning you would still be able to look at Israel to this day and see our people sitting on the throne in some capacity. Right? Just like you can look in Africa and see African leaders who we're not Africans, right? But you got some black nations, they have their leaders, right? And you can see them on the throne. They still got their picture on their dollars. It would have been the same in Jerusalem, and we would not have the added task of trying to prove to people who we really are. We wouldn't have to do that. We wouldn't have to try to figure out ourselves who we really are and then try to teach our children. All that would be a given if we kept the Sabbath. Did you read 26 already? 26, go ahead.
And they shall come from the cities of Judah, and from the places of Jerusalem, and from the land of Benjamin, and from the plain, and from the mountains, and from the south, bringing burnt offerings and sacrifices, and meat offerings and incense, and bringing sacrifice of praise unto the house of the Lord. But if ye will not hearken unto me to hallow the Sabbath day, and not to bear a burden, even entering in at the gates of Jerusalem on the Sabbath day, then will I kindle a fire in the gates thereof, and it shall devour the palaces of Jerusalem, and it shall not be quenched.
Okay. Now let's go to Isaiah 58. Mm-hmm. Isaiah 58, we read this today in the lesson, 13, 58 and 13. Go ahead.
If thou turn away thy foot from the Sabbath, from doing thy pleasure on my holy day.
Okay, so this is the Bible counseling us to turn away from doing our own pleasure on God's holy day. So again, when you're talking about going to a graduation, playing sporting events, because that's another big thing, in our community, the kids playing sporting events. Some people say, well, I hear some camps say, oh, well, you should let the kids play. But that is not what the Bible is telling us, is it? The Bible is telling us, turn away thy foot from the Sabbath, from doing thy pleasure. So we're not supposed to work, we're not supposed to do pleasure, right? On his holy day. Right? Keep going.
And call the Sabbath a delight.
And call the Sabbath a delight. Right? So not only are you turning away from the world on this day and keeping his day holy, but hey, you actually delight in that. I know I look forward to the Sabbath. So he's saying, if this is your situation, you're not doing your own pleasure on his holy day. You're calling the Sabbath a delight. Keep going.
The holy of the Lord.
Uh-huh.
Honorable, and shall honor him, not doing thine own ways, nor finding thine own pleasure, nor speaking thine own words.
So again, it's going to be hard to have a funeral on the Sabbath with the format of a funeral and not speak your own words. Right? It's going to be hard to have a wedding. It'd be impossible to have a wedding on the Sabbath if you're not going to speak your own words. How can you even do your vows? That's literally your own words. That's literally what that is. Right? And why would you subject yourself to put these things on the one day that you can't fully express yourself? Why would you do that? From doing thy pleasure on my holy day and call the Sabbath delight, the holy to the Lord, honorable, and shall honor him. So when we do this, when we come and keep the Sabbath and we don't talk about sports and we don't talk about what we saw on TV the other day, whatever show you watched and all of that kind of stuff, or what we saw on the internet, when we come and we don't do that, we put those things away for a day, the Bible says we are honoring him, right? And shall honor him, not doing thine own ways, nor finding thine own pleasure. So that means not doing thine own ways. So that means, hey, if a married couple is about to get into an argument, you got to get out of the car. Oh, it's the Sabbath. We can't even do this. We can't even do this because that would be your own ways. Yeah, let's put this argument off till sundown. Right, yeah, generally you won't even remember it. But that's what he said. Not doing thine own pleasure, not doing thine own ways, nor finding thine own pleasure, nor speaking thine own words. So again, that's going to render pretty much anything you want to do outside of keeping the Sabbath null and void on the Sabbath day. And again, he's asking for one day. The Lord done set it up to where it's gonna be hard if you end up standing in judgment behind something on the Sabbath. I know if it was me, I open up with, well, hey, you had 6 days and you felt it was important on this one day to do that. Can you go ahead and explain that? And I'm not trying to stand there and explain that, talk about like playing tennis or something silly like that. Like that don't. And I'm looking at the fire like, yeah, well, I just had to go play this tennis game. Nah, that it might make sense right now. That's not gonna make sense in the judgment. I'm telling y'all that right now. But if we do this, right? He said, because there's an if here, so this is conditional. Verse 14, go ahead.
Then shalt thou delight thyself in the Lord, and I will cause thee to ride upon the high places of the earth, and feed thee with the heritage of Jacob thy father, for the mouth of the Lord hath spoken it.
Uh-huh. So what is he saying? If we do this, if we keep the Sabbath diligently, then he will cause us to ride upon the high places of the earth. Now, either we believe this or we don't. Either we think that the world's way is going to cause us to ride upon the high places of the earth, and therefore we compromise the Sabbath and do it that way, or we believe this and do it the Lord's way. That pretty much is what it is. Let's go to Mark chapter 7. Yeah, Mark 7. And this is going to be the major problem with rolling with the Sabbath breakers to do something on the Sabbath. Mark 7, verse 8. 7, 8, go ahead.
For laying aside the commandment of God, ye hold the tradition of men.
See, this is the Lord telling us how he feel about it. Because he peeps, he sees that what the world is doing is they laying aside the commandments of God and holding the tradition of men. Like, for instance, doing family reunions on the weekends on Saturday. Right? Holding funerals on Saturday, holding weddings on Saturday, holding graduations on Saturday. Because the world is set up to work 5 days, not 6. Notice that. The Lord says 6 days shall you work. The world say 5. Why 5, you might ask? Because the Lord got his day for you to observe, and Satan got his day. And normally, the world is scheduled everything where anything you do on your free time starts right at sundown when the Sabbath starts, right? That's when the party starts, right? Friday night. How many songs talk about it's Friday and that's when the party starts? Countless, right? Ain't nobody singing nothing talking about it's Sunday, that's when the party starts, right? You ain't never heard a song say that, did you? It's Saturday night, about to be Sunday, we about to party. Nope, never. So it's Friday night, right? Party start Friday night, the kids' activity starts Saturday, and guess what? It's all done when? So you could go to church. On Sunday. So it's amazing how, no matter how corrupt the world is, we still have an opportunity. We still have an opportunity to decide we're going to serve God, right? We still got that Sabbath day, right? We still got that day. So, again, like I said, the question's been asked a couple of times, so I figure I'd address it concerning, because I guess I can understand it. It appears if the whole world is going one way and you the only one going another way, that's going to seem difficult. I guess that would seem difficult. Everybody swimming downstream, you swimming upstream saying, no, I can't do this, I can't do that on these days. But the word is clear. The word is clear. Let's go to Matthew, and we'll end with this. Matthew 7. Matthew 7, verse 13. 7 and 13. Okay, go ahead.
Enter ye in at the straight gate, for wide is the gate, and broad is the way that leadeth to destruction, and many there be which go in thereat. Because straight is the gate, and narrow is the way which leadeth unto life, and few there be that find it.
Okay, so the Lord, this is Jesus talking out of his mouth. He said, enter ye in at the straight gate, for wide is the gate, and broad is the way that lead to destruction, and many there be which go in thereat. But straight is the gate, and narrow is the way which leadeth to life, and few there be that find it. Right? So, hey, if you one of the few that has found the straight and narrow path, stay on it and be happy, rejoice. Don't jump off that path to get on the broad way because you're lonely. That ain't the way. Cause really what's going to happen, you're going to jump off the narrow path to get on the broad way because you're lonely, go all the way down Broadway, but then when that Broadway turns into the judgment line, you're going to be trying to jump back out. You're not going to be able to. Not going to be able to, right? You're going to be stuck. Ain't going to be no off-ramp.
In express. Can't go nowhere.
So he telling us right here, it's few that find it. You're going to be out, you're going to be an island. He telling you right here. And you got to be okay with that. You got to be okay with not being included, not being involved, sitting it out. You got to be okay with it. If we're going to be on this road. Because otherwise, hey, jump on the Broadway road, have fun, hope it's worth it. So hopefully that helps with that. Any questions or comments on that? Go all the way. That's why I can't, honestly, I can't say nothing about them people that's, people that's drinking out of the cup and doing all that stuff. Go all the way. Hey, at least they trying to get what they can get now because that's all they got. Yeah. Yep. All right, we're going to keep going. We got a question online. The question is, what does the Bible say about What does the Bible say about celebrating birthdays? What does the Bible say about celebrating birthdays? Okay, that's a good question. That's a great question. We got to frame this question. Let's go to Genesis 40. I think we got two references here in the Bible to a birthday feast. Genesis 40. Genesis 40 and verse we can cut to the chase. This is Joseph interpreting the dream. Actually, we'll read into it. You can start at 1. Genesis 40 and 1. Go ahead.
And it came to pass after these things that the butler of the king of Egypt and his baker had offended their lord, the king of Egypt. And Pharaoh was wroth against 2 of his officers, against the chief of the butlers and against the chief of the bakers. And he put them in ward in the house of the captain of the guard, into the prison, the place where Joseph was bound. And the captain of the guard charged Joseph with them, and he served them. And they continued a season in ward. And they dreamed, both of them, each man his dream in one night, each man according to the interpretation of his dream, the butler and the baker of the king of Egypt, which were bound in the prison. And Joseph came in unto them in the morning, and looked upon them, and beheld, they were sad. And he asked Pharaoh's officers that were with him in the ward of his lord's house, saying, Wherefore look ye so sadly today? And they said unto him, We have dreamed a dream, and there is no interpreter of it. And Joseph said unto them, Do not interpretations belong to God? Tell me them, I pray you. And the chief butler told his dream to Joseph, and said to him, In my dream, behold, a vine was before me, and in the vine were 3 branches, and it was as though it budded, and her blossoms shot forth, and the clusters thereof brought forth ripe grapes. And Pharaoh's cup was in my hand, And I took the grapes and pressed them into Pharaoh's cup, and I gave the cup into Pharaoh's hand. And Joseph said unto him, This is the interpretation of it. The 3 branches are 3 days. Yet within 3 days shall Pharaoh lift up thine head, and restore thee unto thy place, and thou shalt deliver Pharaoh's cup into his hand, after the former manner when thou wast with his butler. But think on me when it shall be well with thee, and show kindness, I pray thee, unto me, and make mention of me unto Pharaoh, and bring me out of this house. For indeed I was stolen away out of the land of the Hebrews, and here also have I done nothing that they should put me into the dungeon. When the chief baker saw that the interpretation was good, he said unto Joseph, I also was in my dream, and behold, I had 3 white blankets on my head, and in the uppermost basket there was of all manner of baked meats for Pharaoh, and the birds did eat them out of the basket on my head. And Joseph answered and said, This is the interpretation thereof. The 3 baskets are 3 days. Yet within 3 days shall Pharaoh lift up thy head from off thee, and shall hang thee on a tree, and the birds shall eat thy flesh from off thee. And it came to pass the 3rd day, which was Pharaoh's birthday, that he made a feast unto all his servants, and he lifted up the head of the chief butler and of the chief baker among his servants. And he restored the chief butler unto his butlership again, and he gave the cup into Pharaoh's hand. But he hanged the chief baker, as Joseph had interpreted to them. Yet did not the chief butler remember Joseph, but forgot him.
Okay, so this is one reference to a birthday feast, and this is Pharaoh having a feast for his birthday. And we see on this reference, the butler was restored to his job, and the baker was killed, was hanged. So now let's go to Matthew 14. Matthew 14 and verse, let's start at 1. 14 and 1, go ahead.
At that time, Herod the Tetrarch heard of the fame of Jesus, and said unto his servants, This is John the Baptist. He is risen from the dead, and therefore mighty works do show forth themselves in him. For Herod had laid hold on John, and bound him, and put him in prison for Herodias' sake, his brother Philip's wife. For John said unto him, It is not lawful for thee to have her.
So John told Herod that it wasn't lawful for him to have his brother's wife. And that's why John was put in prison. Verse 5, go ahead.
And when he would have put him to death, he feared the multitude, because they counted him as a prophet. But when Herod's birthday was kept, the daughter of Herodias danced before them and pleased Herod.
Okay, so now here's another birthday feast. Herod's birthday here. When his birthday was kept, so that's the feast, the daughter of Herodias danced before him and pleased Herod. Verse 7.
Whereupon he promised with an oath to give her whatsoever she would ask. And she, being before instructed of her mother, said, Give me here John Baptist's head in a charger. And the king was sorry. Nevertheless, for the oath's sake, and them which sat with him at meat, he commanded it to be given her. And he sent and beheaded John in the prison. And his head was brought in a charger and given to the damsel, and she brought it to her mother.
Okay, that's good. So here's the second reference to a birthday feast being kept. This is going to be Herod here, and John the Baptist was beheaded on this feast. So I have definitely heard people say, every time you had a birthday in the Bible, somebody died. So therefore, you should not keep a birthday. So you can't. You can't draw that conclusion with this, because number one, are we saying that Herod was beheaded because I'm sorry. Are we saying that John the Baptist was beheaded because it was Herod's birthday? And if it wasn't Herod, if Herod didn't celebrate his birthday, that John the Baptist would not be killed? We can't say that. And then when you go to Joseph, the baker was killed, but the butler was actually released, right? So are we saying that the baker was killed because it was Pharaoh's birthday? Yeah. So you can't draw that conclusion. And if that's the case, then we really got a problem with the Passover, because tons of people were killed on the Passover. So we saying we can't. So that doctrinally, that's just not, that it doesn't even get you in the door. You cause yourself a major problem with that doctrine on all sides. You can just poke holes in that doctrine. So that's not sound, and that's not what the book is saying. The book would need to say don't celebrate that particularly, because the birthday is not. Now let's go to 1 Corinthians 10. This is where you draw the line on what you can and cannot celebrate. 1 Corinthians 10. This is where you draw the line. Verse 10 and 27, go ahead.
If any of them that believe not bid you to a feast, and ye be disposed to go.
Okay, so now stop. So already what we're seeing is there would be a circumstance where you would go to a party that's being thrown by non-believers. Because he's saying right here, if any of them that believe not. So these are non-believers, right? And they bid you to a feast or a party, right? And you're able to go. What does he say? Go ahead.
Whatsoever is set before you, eat, asking no questions for conscience sake.
Okay, so what kind of party is a non-believer going to invite you to that you could go to, right? Well, let's see. Keep reading.
But if any man say unto you, this is offered in sacrifice unto idols, eat not for his sake that showed it, and for conscience sake, for the earth is the Lord's and the fullness thereof.
Okay, so that's the type of party that a non-believer is going to invite you to that you cannot partake in. That would be anything where they calling out a God. Anything of a religious nature. So like a Christmas party, an Easter party, things like that. I know once somebody invited me to a, what do you call it when you baptize a baby? A christening. Somebody invited me to that. No, I can't go to that. Absolutely not. Definitely can't do that. And y'all shouldn't go either. That was my response. That was my response. Because again, what are y'all doing? This is about God? Who's blessing? What y'all talking about? Do y'all really want to have this conversation? Right? We can't do that, you know. But a birthday party, somebody say, oh, we commemorating, we getting a year older. That's not calling out a God at all, right? A graduation party, a wedding, a football party, Super Bowl party, fight party. They just had a fight the other day, right? Somebody invited me to that. I would have went to watch the fight, have some chicken wings, right? But see, notice, it is being put on the table that a non-believer can invite you to a feast, right? This is showing you where you draw the line. You can go to whatever as long as they're not calling out a God, as long as they're not dealing in some idolatry, right? So now let's go to, back up to 1 Corinthians 8. No, actually it wouldn't be 8. It is, let's see, where is it? No. Romans 14 is what I'm looking for. Romans 14. Romans 14. Verse 5. Romans 14 and verse 5. Okay, when you get there, go ahead.
One man esteemeth one day above another, another esteemeth every day alike. Let every man be fully persuaded in his own mind.
So now, what is this regarding? If you read this whole chapter, this is regarding disputing concerning things that are not against the will of God. Meaning, it starts by talking about one person is a vegetarian, one is, eats meat. Neither of those things are against the law of God, right? You could be a vegetarian or you could eat meat. All of that's lawful to God. So in that case, you got one person that esteems, I know some people that esteem being a vegetarian or being a vegan. They make that like a huge, they say that's really where it's at. That's really all the rage. And really even, I've seen people even really put a religious connotation on it. Like, this is really what God intended and this is really what you were designed to do. They go that far with it. Hey, that's all fine and dandy, but God has given us room to eat meat. So somebody that's eating meat is not sinning, though that person may feel that way, right? And then he goes into one man esteem one day above another, the other esteem every day alike. So a perfect example of that would be a birthday. Like, I know some people who don't, quote unquote, celebrate their birthday at all, which I say quote unquote, I guess they don't celebrate it. But here's the thing about that. Let's go to Genesis, because you have to commemorate it. Genesis 17. You have to, everybody on the planet, as a matter of fact, has to, in some way, shape, or form, commemorate their birthday. Genesis 17 and verse 1. 17 and 1. Okay, go ahead.
And when Abram was 90 years old and 9.
Okay, how they know that? Because you got to commemorate it. And who created the birthday to begin with? God did. So, if something that God created, non-believers don't get to take what God creates and then make it something and then they own it. And then now all of a sudden we don't all commemorate our birthday. Now that's not how that works. So there's nothing wrong with commemorating your birthday. Now I know the question was, can you celebrate your birthday? Let's go back to Romans. I think it was Romans 15. Let's go back to Romans 15. Romans 14. Because you got to commemorate your birthday. So now, is it a sin if, well, let's read this. Romans 14 and 6. Go ahead.
He that regardeth the day, regardeth it unto the Lord.
See, so that's going to be the key. Hey, if I want to have a birthday party, invite my friends, have some fun, have a few drinks, a few laughs. My kids want to have a birthday party, invite their friends, have some fun, have some cake, all that. Hey, as long as we are thankful to God that he gave us another year, and he's been merciful to us, we regarding the day unto the Lord, we straight. Verse 6, go ahead.
He that regardeth the day, regardeth it unto the Lord. And he that regardeth not the day, to the Lord he doth not regard it. He that eateth, eateth to the Lord, for he giveth God thanks. That eateth not, to the Lord he eateth not, and giveth God thanks.
Okay, that's good. So hopefully that answers that question. If the question here, I'm gonna go a little further with it. That's the story concerning the Bible and birthdays. Now, if the question goes further to ask, what about the traditions that we are aware of concerning the birthdays, and can we do those traditions, i.e. candles and all that kind of stuff? That, you would have to pick some history on where that comes from, believe the history, and deal with it from that standpoint. We don't deal with candles and all that kind of stuff because we don't really know where that comes from. You know what I'm saying? But Outside of that, if you're just talking about celebrating a birthday, which generally celebrating a birthday is people come together, they commemorate the birthday, they give gifts, right? I don't see no law against any of that. So hopefully that answers that question. Any questions or comments on that? Okay. Anybody? Any other questions? We got another question. Y'all gone? All right, peace out. We got any other questions? You see? You don't have your phone, right? That's all good. I'm just trying to see if we have any questions.
Oh, Ellie. Oh, my daughter's
Yeah, you want to look and see if we got any questions on the thing outside of that first one?
You see the first question there?
All right, peace.
Yeah, man. Bless.
All right. All right.
Thank you, amigo.
Any other questions? Oh, let me fix this. It looked like we